Hello and welcome to round 3 of me rereading the Warrior Cat series as an adult. Honestly, I am really happy to be done with the New Prophecy and move on to The Power of Three. I feel like I've seen some internet chatter online that this is a lot of people's least favorite arc, and I can understand why, but I just hate the traveling parts of the New Prophecy so much that I'm just excited to be settled back into normal clan life, or at least semi-normal clan life. I'm on page 125 of this book already, and I'm enjoying it so much more than the first 3.5 books of the New Prophecy. So obviously this arc follows Lion Kit, Holly Kit, and Jay Kit as the primary narrators. I have neutral opinions on Lion Kit, Lion Paw, Lion Blaze. I feel like they tried to pick up some, White Storm energy with him, but he just is a little boring. But I don't mind him as much as I feel like other people do. I'm also kind of neutral on Holly Kit, Holly Paw, Holly Leaf. Her rigidness is definitely a little annoying, but she's not quite as annoying as the angsty Jay Kit, Jay Paw, Jay Feather in the beginning of this book. He just drives me crazy until he mellows out at least a little bit. I like his grumpiness when he starts to get the kind of wise Yellowfang energy about him when he's older, but I don't like his grumpiness when he's young, and I feel really bad for Brightheart, his mentor, who's just trying her best. She has her first apprentice. She's excited that she can finally train another cat how to overcome disadvantages like she has, and J-Paw is just not receptive at all. He spends the first part of this book basically begging the clan to let him try to be a warrior, and then when the clan tries to make reasonable accommodations to help him become a warrior, he's like, no, I'm just gonna go off and do my own thing, even though I'm literally drowning in lakes and falling off cliffs. That part is kind of frustrating. But my biggest problem with this book is that there is no way, zero, that no one in the clan suspects that these three are Crowfeather and Leafpool's kits. Oh, Leafpool and Squirrelflight happened to disappear together for a set amount of time, but where were they? No one really knows, and they come back with 3 kits who Squirrelflight says are her kits, but oh no, Squirrelflight's milk never came in. What a coincidence. And then, oh, what a coincidence, Holly Paw literally looks like Crowfeather. Where did this black fur come from in the Squirrelflight Brambleclaw family tree? There's literally no one in their family tree that has black fur. So I just feel like someone would have to be intelligent enough to guess this. To be fair, I did not guess it as a kid reading the books, but the clan they're surrounded by it, especially when Crowfeather escorts J-Paw back to camp after he gets drowned in the lake, and it's kind of like a Blue Star Mistyfoot situation where it took Fireheart forever to realize that they were the same coloring and that they looked exactly the same, and he knew that there were kits that were missing from ThunderClan, but he just never connected the dots. That's how I feel about this. It's just a big suspension of disbelief to believe that any of these cats would not notice or have suspicions. So that's probably my least favorite part of this arc, but yeah. I've talked about character bloat a lot in the last couple videos, but there are just so many apprentices because we had all of Daisy's kits who became apprentices, and then all of Sorreltail's kits who became apprentices. So that's 6 cats just between them. And then we have all of Squirrelflight / Leafpool's kits who become apprentices, and it's just there's so many apprentices that none of them are given an identity because there's not page time to give any of them an identity, so then they all end up just feeling like a version of the same character, and so I wish that they had just lessened the amount of apprentices that were coming out of that situation so that they could actually develop real friendships. Part of the reason why the first arc is so successful is because for a long time, Firepaw, Greypaw, Sandpaw, Dustpaw, Ravenpaw, 5. That's the only apprentices, and they end up with a really strong 5-person dynamic, and then obviously when Ravenpaw leaves, you end up with 4, and I feel like their dynamic as a group is really good and established, and that's what makes Dustpaw and Sandpaw Sandstorm such good characters even later in the series when they don't have as much page time. We are continuing with book 1, The Sight. I have not been reading these as fast. I know I said that in the New Prophecy video too, but this time it's really true. I'm just reading them casually, whereas when I read the first series, I pretty much binge read them and didn't do anything else. But I am trying to continue reading other things as well, and so I just kind of pick these up when I'm in the mood for something light, and I am still listening to them partially on audiobook when I run, so that's been helpful. But that is why this video will probably take place over like 2 or 3 months instead of 2 weeks. So the big thing that I read about in between the last clip and this one is that Graystripe has come back, and I always forgot that it happened at the beginning of this arc. For some reason I thought it always happened way later in the series, but it doesn't. It happens at the beginning of this arc. And then Firestar has the confusion of, oh no, do I make Brambleclaw still my deputy, or do I reinstate Graystripe as deputy, because Graystripe was never dead, so the death ceremony that they had for him, I guess, like, they're worried that it would be against the warrior code for Brambleclaw to continue being deputy, even though it's kind of against the warrior code for him to be deputy in the first place because he never had an apprentice. But you know what? Whatever. I always thought it was kind of ridiculous, A, that Firestar was seriously considering making Graystripe deputy again, and B, that Graystripe wouldn't just say, no, Firestar, just keep Brambleclaw as deputy. Like, Graystripe didn't even want to be deputy in the first place. He just took it because White Storm told Firestar to make Graystripe deputy. He has no ambition to be leader. He was gone for like a long time. He's gonna have to recover, learn all the new clan politics, learn all these new cats. It's like, it makes literally zero sense for him to be deputy, and he should know that, and he should just have told Firestar to make Brambleclaw deputy still. So that kind of just never made any sense to me. I do like Graystripe and Millie together though. This is when we introduce Millie, and as a nice counterpoint to Daisy, who is also a former kitty pet who has come to live with the clan but has no interest in actually participating in any warrior activities, Millie, at least at this point, seems raring to go on the border patrols and the fights and all of that. We also get a scuffle with Shadow Clan, and that would be J-Paw's first fight as an apprentice, and of course that makes him realize, oh wait, I can't actually do this. And then we have Hollypaw, the worst medicine cat ever, kind of figuring out that she doesn't actually want to be a medicine cat, which is fair because she's not very good at it. Alrighty, I have finished book 1 of arc 3, The Sight. It was pretty enjoyable. I listened to it mostly on audiobook, and I feel like when I listen to things on audiobook, it's hard for me to really tell how much I like them because I can't read it any faster. You know, like in exciting scenes, you start skimming, you start really getting into it, but like the audiobook narrator is going to read it as fast as they're going to read it no matter what scene is going on, so it's always a little bit difficult for me to tell. But I like J-Paw, Hollypaw, and Linepaw. I think it's interesting enough being in all of their heads. I think they're all pretty decent narrators in their own way, and it's just nice to be done with the traveling for the moment. And you get Graystripe coming back. That's somewhat interesting. The back half of this book is mostly filled with J-Paw learning to be a medicine cat apprentice and kind of getting over the fact that he will never be a true warrior. And then there's a sickness in the clan. Mousefur gets green cough, and they have to go to River Clan to get more herbs. That part I just feel like kind of dropped off a cliff out of nowhere, like it was a big plot point, and then suddenly it was like, oh, one warm day, everyone's okay again. So I don't know, I thought that that was a little weird, but I love Mousefur and Longtail as elders. I think they're so funny. And I was wondering, it was Goldenflower one of the cats who died like in between the arcs, because I feel like she just vanished off the face of the earth, and I feel like she deserved more than that, like that. And Rainwhisker too, both of them, if they died in between. I mean, I know Rainwhisker was one of the cats that died between the arcs, but if Goldenflower was also one of the ones, they both deserved something a little bit better. Like there were more NPC cats that they could have killed off than those two, so whatever. The camera died, and I don't feel like waiting for it to charge before I finished saying what I was going to say. So this book ends kind of anticlimactically. They go to the gathering, and some of the clans start saying that Thunder Clan has brought too many, you know, like kitty pets and outsiders into the clan, and that they're not really a true clan anymore, and they kind of start fighting about that. But then Squirrelflight comes up with the idea to have a second gathering a couple days later where all of the apprentices can kind of compete with each other and, you know, share skills and stuff as a reminder of the great journey. And I thought that was a nice little character beat for Squirrelflight, because she's never really been like a problem solver or like a resolver of conflict. And so since obviously later Bramblestar makes her his deputy, I feel like paves the way a little bit for us to see her maturity, because obviously in the last arc she was still pretty immature up until the last book. So obviously it's clear now that she's grown up a little bit in her solving of that problem. So I liked that. And the little competition thing at the end was nice, with J-Paw digging Lion Paw and Breeze Paw out of the old badger den that collapsed. But other than that, pretty much the only like exciting thing that happens at the end of the book is that J-Paw walks in Firestar's dreams and learns there will be 3 kin of your kin who hold the power of the stars in their paws, or whatever it is, something like that. So that sets off like the start of this prophecy for the rest of the next 2 arcs, I guess, really. So now I'm on to book 2, Dark River. I feel like these 2 books have some of the worst covers in this whole arc. There are some that are gorgeous in the next 2 arcs, like the best in the entire series, and these 2 are just kind of anticlimactic. Like if you open up Dark River all the way, there's not much detail. There's not even any cats like anywhere on the book, so it's just kind of in my opinion. Alright, I'm about 20% of the way through the Dark River audiobook. I figured I would talk about it while I'm cutting up this apple for my salad. So excuse any background noise. I am on my phone again, which I hate filming on my phone because it looks like ass, but sometimes that's just what we got, and that's what we got right now. So Dark River, at the beginning, it's essentially Lion Paw is sneaking around to see Heatherpaw, and then Hollypaw and Cinderpaw find out about it, but currently they have not really told anyone, so it's still a secret. I feel like Lion Paw is just, he's good intentioned, he's just a little dumb. Like, you have to know that that's a stupid idea, even if you don't have any, like, you know, significant romantic feelings for her. Like, they're just playing around because they're still young. It's just still dumb, but, you know, it's a decent plot point. I'm a little tired of the forbidden love trope in this series, but it's okay. And right now, Heatherpaw literally just snuck into their camp to come find Lion Paw, and he talks about how White Wing is on guard. And I feel like they don't do that much with the cats guarding the camp. Like, there's very few scenes where we're in the head of the cat who's guarding the camp. And I feel like they could do so much more with that. I don't necessarily know in which way, but I just feel like they could do more with it. And then I want to again talk about the whole, these are actually Leafpool's and Crowfeather's kids, and Squirrelflight knows, obviously. I want to talk about that again, because I want to talk about why they didn't just tell Brambleclaw. I completely understand why later Brambleclaw is pissed AF, because I would be pissed AF if I was him too. I feel like, you know, Squirrelflight took him as her mate because she trusted him. Well, if she trusts him, she should also trust him enough to just confide in him before all of it had happened. Like, if she had just said, hey, Leafpool is pregnant, like, I need to go away with her, and, like, we have to pretend like these are our kids, I feel like he would have done it, and then at least, like, the reveal would have still been painful to the kids, but it wouldn't have been as painful to, like, him and his relationship with Squirrelflight, because if you think about Bluestar's prophecy, that's essentially what Thrushpelt volunteered to do for Bluefur. When she was pregnant with her kids, everyone knew, and they all just assumed Thrushpelt was the father, and she told him, like, well, obviously he knew he wasn't the father, but he was like, hey, I'll pretend like I am. And, like, they could have very well just have done that, and I don't know. Minor Dark River update. I'm at the part where Firestar decides to make Millie a ThunderClan warrior, which is cute because I do like Millie. But I also feel like it was kind of unnecessary to bring Graystripe back to the clan at all. In the end of the New Prophecy arc, they had such a nice, like, death ceremony for him, and Firestar had kind of accepted and moved on the loss of his friend, and it would have been sad, obviously, to never see Graystripe again because he was such an iconic character from the first arc, but it feels like he just kind of gets back to the clan and then he doesn't have any significant character arc ever again, so it just kind of feels like it was pointless to bring him back at all. But I don't know, I can see it in both ways. I obviously know why they did it, because Graystripe is a beloved fan character, so I think bringing him back was a little bit of fan service, but then they don't really do anything with his character afterwards, so it just creates, once again, more character bloat in the clans. Alrighty, I'm about halfway through Dark River. I still think this arc is pretty enjoyable. It's definitely better than the beginning of New Prophecy
Prophecy. I'm still having fun. Basically, the big thing that has happened in the last couple chapters is that Cinderpaw climbs into a tree and falls and breaks her leg, and obviously Leafpool's freaking out because she kind of knows that Cinderpaw is a reincarnation of Cinderpelt, and so she's very concerned that Cinderpaw is going to lose her leg again like she did in her original life, but obviously that does not happen because J-Paw walks in Cinderpaw's dreams and hears from StarClan that they are not going to screw her over again, basically. I don't really have a problem with Cinderpaw's reincarnation. I feel like I like Cinderpaw as a character much more in her second go-round. I was never able to explain why I didn't love Cinderpelt ever in the original arc. I just didn't. I don't know why. I really don't, but I like Cinderpaw a lot in this series, so I'm excited. I like her as a character to keep reading about her and stuff. They're also having some issues with Wind Clan because Wind Clan is hunting squirrels on Wind Clan territory, not Thunder Clan territory, but people are getting mad about it, and Firestar is basically like, nah, we're not gonna do anything, and then J-Paw gets mad that Firestar doesn't want to do anything, and I'm like, finally Firestar is like, you know what, we're not gonna interfere with other clans' business because we saw how that went for us in the last arc and how annoyed everyone got, so he's much better in this arc. It feels like a completely different character, like someone that actually knew Firestar's character is writing him again, because he just felt non-Firestar-y in the second book. In the second arc, he was way too involved in everyone's business, so he's much better now, which is good, thank God. But then, of course, they see Tornir on patrol, and every time I see Tornir, I'm like, that motherfucker's still alive. That's how I feel about a lot of cats. Barkface and Tornir from Wind Clan, like, they were titled cats, meaning they had their full warrior name, even though Barkface is not a warrior. When Firepaw ended up in ThunderClan, like, they have to be ancient. How is Tornir not already an elder? He has to be so old. He has to be one of the oldest warriors. I mean, same with Mistyfoot too, but like, Mistyfoot, you know, is just kind of an anomaly throughout the rest of the series in terms of her age, but I don't know, I just feel like those two have to be so ancient.
Greetings. I have finished book 2, Dark River. This is the book that focuses mainly on the tunnels and the history of Fawn Leaves and Rock, who were ancient cats, who basically the ancient cats had to go through some sort of ritual to become warriors where they went through the tunnels, but Fawn Leaves got stuck under there because it was pouring rain and the tunnels flooded. And J-Paw finds a stick that has all these carvings on it that's marking all of the cats who went into the tunnels and didn't make it back out. And for some reason I remembered the tunnels and the stick crossing over multiple books, but it seemed like it was wrapped up really quickly. I can't remember if the tunnels actually come back in any significant way, but the end of this book is Breezepaw, Heatherpaw, Lionpaw, J-Paw, Hollypaw going into the tunnels to rescue some Wind Clan kits who ended up there after following Heatherpaw one night because they're trying to stop a war between River Clan and Wind Clan and Thunder Clan because River Clan had to abandon their camp and has been living on the island because two-legged kits were splashing around in the stream by their camp, and the whole thing just seemed a little melodramatic, honestly. Like I've said many times, I hate they've slowed down the books so much. Like, we're already on book 3, Outcast, and they're not even warriors yet, like J-Paw, Hollypaw, and Lionpaw, and I don't even think they are at the end of book 3 either. It's like ridiculous, you know, by this point in the first arc, Fireheart was a warrior by the end of the first book, and that made everything just seem so much more interesting because we were following so much more of each cat's life. And also, there was like no battles at all in this book. The whole point was that they were trying to avoid battles, which is fine, but the amount of times that they fought and cats died in the first arc, I just feel like it made everything so much more significant and every decision so much more significant. But now it feels like no one dies, so it's just, you like kind of know going into every fight that it's not going to be stressful at all, and I miss like being stressed about who was gonna die. You just don't feel that anymore. So overall this book was okay. I don't mind the tunnels, but it was nothing super exciting. And now I'm on to book 3, Outcast. I literally don't remember this book at all. I could not tell you a single thing that happens except for from reading the back. I figured out that they're going back to the tribe of Rushing Water, which is probably why I don't remember anything about it, because I was probably skimming it the 2 times that I've read through it before, because I think anything dealing with the tribe of Rushing Water is kind of boring, and I hate when they are not, when there are books where they're not in the clans and set in the clan camps. So not really looking forward to this. Hopefully there's at least one perspective character that is still stuck at the clans, otherwise it will be really monotonous to get through. I will do a book 2/3 recap of some of my feelings on the characters overall. J-Paw, now that he's kind of used to being a medicine cat, is significantly less grumpy, so I'm just kind of neutral on him. He's a fine character, he's a fine narrator. Lionpaw, I like. I know people say that Lion Paw's boring, but I don't think he's boring, and I think it's nice to have a character who's just kind of more well-regulated compared to the narrators of the previous arc, and also some of the other narrators in this arc. I know a lot of people also find Holly Paw annoying. I would not find her super annoying if not for the audiobook narrator. The audiobook narrator, I mean, it's a dude that's narrating the books, and his voice for Holly Paw is so grating that it's like anytime she says anything that's remotely annoying, him narrating it somehow makes it even more annoying. So I'm just very frustrated with that. You know, it's so squeaky. She's like, I feel it. It's like, oh. So hopefully as she ages and maybe someday eventually becomes a warrior, that will resolve itself, but we'll see. I'm making progress on book 3, Outcast. I realized I did not talk about this cover. I had problems with the first 2 covers in this arc. I like this one much better. I like the covers that are more broad in scale, where you can kind of see how small the cats are compared to the grandeur of their surroundings. And even though this one doesn't have any cats actually in the frame other than obviously the close-up portrait, I still like the mountains and the blue sky. It gives you a good idea of what the book is about, so definitely improving. But some of my favorite covers of all time are still coming up, so we'll have to get there. I am on chapter 6, which is page 65. Basically, both J-Paw and Holly Paw are having a very similar kind of existential crisis at the beginning of this book, and I feel like it makes way more sense for J-Paw to be having this existential crisis rather than Holly Paw. Her whole thing about not knowing whether she wants to be a clan leader or be a mother, I think is very good and makes sense with her character and kind of harkens back to themes from earlier in the books, especially Blue Star's Prophecy Special Edition. So I think that kind of existentializing is fine, but when she starts existentializing about like ancient cats, it doesn't really make any sense. But then when J-Paw does, it makes sense, because obviously J-Paw was the one who found the stick. J-Paw has been talking to Fallen Leaves and Rock. J-Paw knew more of the history of the tunnels, and so it just kind of felt like it was out of nowhere that Holly Paw starts talking about this. I would have rather the focus just been on her like already, you know, kind of deciding that she doesn't really want to have romantic relationships with other cats and that she would rather just focus on being like ambitious. I do like that. I also think it's funny because in the last book and this book, Tiger Star and Hawk Frost literally just can't like leave anyone alone. Of course, now are going after Lion Paw to try to help him, and honestly they have given him some like decent advice so far, but obviously we know that that's not gonna last. I just think it's funny that they like don't know that they're not related to Lion Paw. You would think that all of StarClan and by extension the Dark Forest would have seen that Leafpool had the kits and not Squirrelflight, and so it makes you wonder like how much does StarClan actually see? I would have just been under the impression that they see like everything, but apparently that's not the case, so it's just a little confusing. I'm back. I thought of one more thing I wanted to say about this arc overall. I feel like the biggest problem about this arc is that there's no like overarching evil or overarching storyline. I don't even think J-Paw gets the prophecy about, you know, there will be 3 kin of your kin who hold the power of the stars in their paws, whatever, until like midway or 3/4 of the way through the first book. And other than us just being like, wow, I wonder what their powers are, there's literally no like thing that they're fighting against. I feel like what made the first arc so powerful is that A, there was this mystery about which cat was like doing all of these bad things, and then once Fireheart figured out that it was Tiger Star, then you have the arc of Fireheart trying to prove to everyone else that Tiger Star's evil. Then once everyone knows that Tiger Star's evil, then you have Fireheart trying to help everyone else rid the forest of Tiger Star, and you get the whole Blood Clan. Like there's a point that we're trying to get to, and with this arc I feel like it's just like, alright, here's the day in the life of all of these cats, and like cool, but I feel like there needs to be some sort of plot thread pulling us along, and it's just not existing right now. Apologies for any background noise. It is lawn mowing season, my least favorite time of the year. It's just always so loud, and I'm sweaty because it's really hot in here because we have not turned on the AC yet, because it should not be 83 degrees. But alas, I am making progress on book 3, Outcast. I'm actually going through this one pretty quickly. It's actually more interesting than I expected because we're already on page like 160, 170, and they're only just now leaving to go back to the tribe. And basically we learned through J-Paw reading Brooke's mind basically that in the past, Stormfur and Brook were thrown out because there were invaders in the tribe territory, and it was Stormfur's idea to go and attack them directly, except for like the tribe's not really trained for that, and so obviously a lot of them died, and they all blamed Stormfur, and so they drove him out, and then Brook went with him, and that's how we ended up where we are today. And of course somehow Hollypaw, Jaypaw, and Lionpaw all weasel their way into getting to go on this journey, even though it makes not really any sense for them to go, but they're going, and so is Breezepaw, and so I just love the awkwardness between Leafpool, Crowfeather, Knight, whatever, like Crowfeather's mate in WindClan, and Breezepaw whenever they all interact, because it's like everyone knows something, but like only some of them know everything, and it's just very dramatic. Slightly horrific camera angle, but we roll with it. Also, sorry for any mowing sounds in the background. It is spring, and they're literally just here 24/7 mowing. Like, there simply cannot be this much grass to mow. First you have the mowing, and then they start using the electric blowers to blow all the grass off the paths, which would naturally happen with wind in like less than 24 hours, but whatever. It's just very frustrating. It's not relaxing at all to be home during the day. But anyway, I have finished book 3, Outcast, which pretty much just involved them trying to convince the tribe that they need to go attack the intruders and set real boundaries. And then they did that, and they kind of won in literally the shortest battle in the entire world. And so it was a little anticlimactic, especially because you're kind of left with an unresolved conclusion about whether those borders are actually going to stay or not. And I guess the authors probably just want to be able to go back to like the tribe stuff later on, but I don't know, it just felt kind of like a lame ending and just a book that had no point other than to, I guess, maybe deliver Stormfur and Brook back to the tribe. I'm not sure if they actually stay there because I have not started book 4, Eclipse, yet. It's an okay cover. I would say the covers in the next arc are some of my favorite that the original cover artist ever did. I feel like he was slacking a little bit in this arc because they're all a little like boring, but it's okay. I do remember kind of that there's this cat named Soul who comes in and starts telling everyone about like the eclipse and the end of the world or something like that. But like I said, the problem with this arc, just that there's kind of no point. I guess at the end of Outcast, Jaypaw is finally going to tell Hollypaw and Lionpaw about the prophecy that he knows, but since we know, obviously we know because we've read it before, but if we didn't, we know nothing about why we should care about this prophecy because everything's peaceful, there's no evil, there's no hint of evil other than just Lionpaw occasionally taking advice from Tiger Star and Hawkfrost. It's just, everything is a little bit like underwhelming, and I don't really remember what necessarily happens in the back half of this arc except for maybe Ashfur finding out about their parentage, but I don't know if that's in the next arc or this arc, so either way, we'll keep going. Okay, I've literally only read 3 pages of Eclipse and I already have to say something. I feel like this is actually a pretty good line from Warrior Cats. In the prologue, Yellowfang, Blue Star, White Storm, and Spotted Leaf and Tall Star are like hanging around talking about if they're hiding too much from the cats of the prophecy, basically. And Yellowfang says, "Lives begun in deception are always lived in shadow." I don't know, I feel like that's a pretty baller sentence for Warrior Cats. I'm back. It has been probably over 3 months since I last filmed my reading of the Warrior series. I gave up after the prologue of Eclipse. Not anything in particular to do with Eclipse, just because I was getting very burned out. And honestly, just none of the future series can at all compare to the first arc. Like, the first arc is just god tier, and the problems that I have with every arc that follows the first arc just keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse. There's still obviously enjoyable parts, and I still overall enjoy reading them, but it's just not the same, and it never will be. But I am committed to finishing this arc and probably the next one as well, so we will keep trucking through. This book is just boring. I'm on page 215, and nothing happened until like page 170. At the beginning, it's just Jaypaw figuring out ways to help Cinderpaw recover by swimming so that she can strengthen the leg that she broke in the last book. And then Hollypaw's just kind of wandering around trying to decide what she wants to do with her life in the future, whether she wants to become a clan leader or whether she wants to become a mother, like those debates that she started in the end of the last book. So she just kind of has
no point right now. Lionpaw is still training with Tiger Star and Hawk Frost in the Dark Forest, and his perspective is at least a little bit interesting because he has that kind of internal struggle of like, oh, I want to fight all the time because I am the best warrior and I can't be killed in battle, but then he also kind of recognizes that like it's not a great long-term thought to have because you can't just live your entire life by fighting. But other than that, nothing else is happening, and that is because this arc has no villain. Like, no long-standing villain or problem. At least in the last arc, it was, oh, the forest is getting destroyed, we need to move, then we need to settle into our new territories, and obviously the first arc had the great villain Tiger Star and Scourge and Bloodclan and all that stuff that was like a thread that went through the whole arc. This arc just has nothing except for the prophecy, but since there's no evil that they're fighting against yet, it's like, it just feels like we're meandering. That gets a little bit better about halfway through this book because that is when Soul appears, the strange cat that talks about darkness, which obviously we know is an eclipse because we're not cats and we have scientific knowledge. But that scene is actually really well written. It's mysterious. It's honestly kind of like uneasy and stressful. I feel like the vibes with Soul appearing are really good, and I almost wish that Soul had been a bigger part of the whole arc. Like, he could have been a great long-term villain or just like cat that kind of keeps reappearing and has this whole mystery around him, but instead it's just kind of like a one and done thing, which I think is a disservice to the idea of Soul as a cat. He could have been really powerful and interesting, but instead we just end up with like him kind of prophesizing about this battle. I also love there's a scene where J-Paw is going down to the lake to try to find a stick and he can't find it, but then Firestar appears and Firestar's like, oh, you want that stick that's floating right there? And J-Paw's like, yeah, please, can you get it? And Firestar's like, my grandson is weird, but okay. And I love that J-Paw can't read Firestar's thoughts as well as he can other cats. I think it makes sense that his power has kind of a limiting factor when confronted with a more powerful mind. You know, Firestar's a leader, he has to go and make these big decisions, and he's an older cat compared to J-Paw, so to me it makes sense that his thoughts would be kind of shrouded because he just has probably a very powerful, like, mental, whatever. Even though he doesn't know that he's shielding his thoughts, it just makes sense, and I don't think it would be story appropriate for J-Paw to just constantly be able to read, like, every thought that a leader has, because then he just becomes basically, like, a god and not a cat, and that's just not interesting. But I just thought that was a cute scene because you don't see Firestar interacting with the three all that much, and it kind of just felt like Firestar of old, where he was, you know, always up to a little mischief in the first arc with Graystripe, so that when he sees that J-Paw is just doing something really weird, he's like, okay, that's weird, but whatever, that's your problem. I just thought it was funny. So right now, about 3/4 of the way through the book, I'm on chapter 15. They are fighting a massive battle because Wind Clan invaded in the middle of the night, and then they find out that River Clan is also helping Wind Clan fight Thunder Clan, so then Thunder Clan went to ask Shadow Clan for help, and now Shadow Clan's helping them, so now it's just a big 4-clan battle on Thunder Clan's territory, and it is finally not boring, but it is definitely a very, 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 very long, drawn-out battle. I'm pretty sure the battle just takes up like an entire 150 pages of the book, which is at least good. But also, I feel like I don't remember anyone dying, at least not from ThunderClan. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't remember. But more cats need to die. I've said this 1,000 times, but like the first arc was literally cat Game of Thrones, and I understand that they've slowed the timeline way down, which I don't like. You have already an overpopulation problem in ThunderClan. You have this massive 4-clan battle. The least that you can do is use that as an opportunity to kill off some cat. It's just not stressful anymore when you pretty much know that everyone's gonna survive. Let's continue. Alright, it is later the same day. I have finished book 4, Eclipse. The second half of this book was so good. And I kind of misspoke when I said that Soul wasn't really impactful later because I forgot about his whole thing with Blackstar, which I also think is really interesting. Really, I just think that Soul is interesting, and if he had been more involved through the early books of the arc, also even just hints of his existence here and there, I feel like it would have been a nice thread to conclude the whole arc, but alas. There's some fun moments at the end of this book. Like, Sandstorm is such an entertaining mentor. I don't know why, I just feel like she always says the funniest things to all of her apprentices. She's like a drill sergeant, like Foxpaw was sleeping in and Sandstorm was like, get up you dormouse, and I just thought that was funny. And I also liked how Dustpelt and some of the older warriors after the giant battle were reminiscing about the Blood Clan battle, like telling all the younger warriors,
oh, you weren't there, this battle was nothing compared to that back in the day. And it just makes you feel like an actual authentic amount of time has passed, where now it's only the senior warriors who actually remember things. But speaking of senior cats like Barkface and Little Cloud have been alive for 6,000 years, and they're still going strong, I guess, but they really need to be replaced. And I was correct in saying that not a single cat died from ThunderClan in this battle, which was kind of crazy because it is the biggest battle that they've ever had at the lake and no one died. That just seems super unrealistic to me. Squirrelflight was mortally injured, but no one else had any serious injuries. There was no death. That was kind of like anticlimactic for this massive battle. And then the gathering at the end felt kind of rushed because they all show up to the gathering after this big, huge battle. And obviously they're confused because Soul and Blackstar are there, but ThunderClan just kind of has no reaction to seeing WindClan again, despite the fact that WindClan just invaded their territory. And we never really learned in this book, at least, why RiverClan decided to ally with them. I just feel like they were trying to cram too many things into the end, whereas the first half of the book was pretty boring and it could have been spread out a little bit more and it would have been a little bit more satisfying. But Eclipse was pretty good. We are moving on to Book 5, Long Shadows. It is because of this book that in my own writing I use the term long shadows all the time to describe things in the forest, and it is because of this. I think it's such a good phrase. I don't remember what this book is about, but at least Lionblaze and Hollyleaf are finally warriors. It's going to be really difficult for me to not call them Lionpaw and Hollypaw, but Lionblaze, Hollyleaf, or Jaypaw is still Jaypaw, not quite yet Jayfeather, but at least we have 2 books in this arc of them being warriors because I was getting very tired of them being apprentices. Hello, this plant just keeps getting bigger and bigger and dips lower and lower every single month that I film this video, but I am making progress through Long Shadows. I am on chapter 5, page 61. This book is definitely the best in the arc so far, and I'm only a part way in because we have the continuation of the Soul ShadowClan Blackstar questline. Been playing too much WoW. Storyline from earlier, from the previous book, and it helped a lot with making it feel like we're actually headed somewhere with the prophecy, even though I know we are, but it hadn't felt like it. I also think, and I've always thought that Lionblaze's relationship with Ashfur is really interesting. The fact that Ashfur was Lionblaze's mentor, even with the whole drama between Ashfur and Squirrelflight and Brambleclaw. And to be honest, you can say what you will about Ashfur. He was a pretty good mentor to Lionpaw despite all of that drama. I feel like only now that Lionblaze is a warrior are they starting to have tension. Like they had that fight that Firestar had to break up. But otherwise, I feel like it was a really strong character beat for both of them to be partnered together. It made it interesting for the readers because we know information that Lionblaze doesn't know and that Ashfur doesn't know also. Right now, Millie and Briarkit have green cough, and so Leafpool and Jaypaw are busy trying to treat that because the catmint at the abandoned two-leg place got trampled during the battle, and now Jaypaw gets to go to the moon pool alone, and hopefully soon he will get his medicine cat name so that I can stop calling him Jaypaw. It's been a few weeks, but I finished book 5, Long Shadows. I went on vacation, and so I was not reading the Warriors books for a while, and then the week before that I was desperately trying to finish a book for my book club, so I had left off probably on page 200 or so, and then had to jump back into it, and I was really enjoying this book. I thought the sickness plot was really, really good, and then when I had to pick it back up, I just kind of forgot what had been going on, so then it became less interesting, but I still think that this is the best book in the arc so far. It was actually enjoyable and had a real plot, and there were life or death scenarios happening, whereas I feel like in the previous books, everyone was just kind of waltzing around with no real danger. I have a few thoughts written down because I knew I would not remember everything that I wanted to say. The first is that the plot with Jaypaw / Jayfeather dreaming about his ancient self, I'm very torn on. I can't decide whether it was entertaining or boring. I think it was very jarring to suddenly be introduced to all of these different cats with strange names. So it takes a while to finally get invested in the plot, and then as soon as you get invested in the plot of these ancient cats deciding to leave the lake to go settle in the mountains, which makes them obviously the ancestors of the tribe of Endless Hunting, by the time you actually get to that point and you're curious what happens, then the
dream ends, and so I don't know, it just feels kind of like a waste of page space if they're not actually going to continue with that in any way, which I think it does come back, but I don't really remember. A very minor thing, I think Spiderleg and Daisy's relationship is really interesting. Obviously, like there's a scene where Leafpool is telling Spiderleg that he should be more interested in his kits because they deserve to have him as a father, even though him and Daisy aren't together anymore. And I love that Spiderleg's like, well, I never even meant to get Daisy pregnant. And I just think it's interesting to see a previously mated relationship that didn't work out, but then they still have kids. I think it's just an interesting dynamic. The major plot of this book after they got over the whole Shadow Clan soul thing was that the sickness in ThunderClan, everyone had green cough, and Jay Feather was trying to convince Lion Blaze to go into WindClan territory to get Catmint, but he didn't want to because of a bad dream about Heathertail, all that stuff, whatever. But the fact that no one died from the sickness, I mean, Firestar lost one single life, and I did not want Millie to die. Obviously, she was the sickest. I didn't want her to die, but I feel like someone should have died. I've said this with every single dramatic event that's happened in this entire arc, is that, like, literally no one has died, and it makes everything super anticlimactic compared to the first arc. So another thing, Hollyleaf's perspective was hardly in this book, at least for the second half, which was actually a good thing because she has no current character arc until like the end of this book, but she was just kind of like meandering around trying to decide, oh, do I want to be a mother? Do I want to be a leader? Whatever. Lion Blaze and Jay Feather had way more going on, so I was much happier to have most of this book told from their point of view. And then that leads me into the ending. This book ends with the reveal that Squirrelflight and Brambleclaw did not father Jay Feather, Lion Blaze, and Hollyleaf, and Ashfur learns this, and Ashfur's gonna reveal it at the gathering, but then Ashfur winds up dead before he can. And obviously, I know who killed Ashfur because I've read the series before. I'm looking at you, Hollyleaf. But I feel like the fire at the end was so random. Like, we just go into, oh, cats are better from the sickness. Oh no, there's this big fire. And then the last like 20 to 30 pages are so rushed. Not that the reveal was rushed, because obviously we're 5 books in at this point. We should be having the reveal, but everyone's reactions to the reveal and the lead up with the fire and the storm, it just was, I don't know, I feel like it needed another few pages. And then at the end, when they find Ashfur's body, like, no one reacts. I'm not kidding. Even Ferncloud, who's there and is Ashfur's sister, is just like, oh, be careful with the body. Like, literally no one cares that Ashfur is dead. No one's sad. Normally when someone dies, you know, there's like wailing and someone's sad. So I don't know, maybe he was just like actually a really unliked cat in general, but I feel like for most of the clan he was a loyal and dependable warrior, so I don't see why anyone would have had a problem with him except for the whole Squirrelflight Brambleclaw drama, which I won't get into. So I just felt like that whole ending was a little strange and didn't really work, but that leads us into the final book in Power of Three, Sunset. I don't remember what happens in this book, except for that I'm sure everyone finds out about Hollyleaf and I think she dies, but I don't know if that happens at the end of this arc or at the beginning of the next one. Probably the end of this one. Let's get into it. Alright, a little Sunset update. I'm on page 84 and pretty good. I have no really strong thoughts yet, except for in the prologue, Yellowfang and Bluestar are arguing, and Yellowfang says, like, Bluestar, you have basically, like, no right to hide these, like, secrets. Your secret has been a maggot eating away inside an apple. ThunderClan is rotten to the core, blah, 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 because Bluestar, I guess, is, like, advocating for not telling the three the truth about their parentage. And I'm like, you hypocrite. You were the one who pretended like Broken Star was not your gift for the longest time, and look what happened to that. Like, if she had just admitted, look at my past mistakes, look how that all turned out, look at your past mistakes, Bluestar, but instead she's just like going off on Bluestar, and it's like, girl, you did the same thing. Both of you did, so at least Bluestar's not being a hypocrite. You, Yellowfang, on the other hand. But basically, the plot of the beginning of this is the clan trying to find Ashfur's murderer. Leafpool already knows because she found fur in Ashfur's neck. But Firestar sends a group off to go talk to Midnight because they learned that Soul basically learned everything about the clans from Midnight. And thank goodness the traveling part of this book is not very long. They condensed the journey from the clans to the Sundrown Place into like 20 pages, so it wasn't that bad at all. And it was cute that Hazeltail got to meet her father at the horse place. I do think it's weird though that Firestar picked Birchfall for this journey because White Wing is his mate and she's about to have kids. It's just like you have so many other warriors. You have an overabundance of warriors. I'm sure you could have picked another one to go on the journey and it would have been fine. So that was just kind of strange, but I don't mind Birchfall, he's fine. I can hardly believe I'm saying this after this video has taken me like 5 months to make, but I am almost done with book 6, Sunrise. I'm not gonna say sunset this time. I'm on page 216, which means I only have about 100 pages left, and I have some things to say. I think overall as a final book, this is pretty anticlimactic. Like I said, the whole problem with the series is that we're not really building up to anything, and I was wrong, by the way. There is a lot of traveling in this book. There's the whole thing with the dogs and the two-leg place and then meeting this group of cats that Soul had interacted with, and that part was a little bit interesting just because it builds Soul's backstory, and I think Soul is a very interesting character. But then we just get a lot of pages dedicated to them traversing the two-leg place, which is just not that interesting in any of the books. And they end up reuniting with Purdy and bringing Purdy back to become an elder, and I think it's funny that Purdy and Mousefer get along because normally she hates outsiders, but with Purdy she's just like, you know what, you're okay, we can just chat and complain the whole day. And you know, that would be the kind of elder I would be too. I'd be like, yes, someone to complain with, okay. The only interesting chapters in this book are Jay Feathers because he's still back at camp, whereas Hollyleaf and Lionblaze have gone off on the search party for Soul. And the reason why Jay Feathers chapters are interesting is because he's trying to uncover the clue to his parentage, and I think it's an interesting mystery, even though I already know the answer. But he's talking to Mousefer, and he realizes that Mousefer was fed a mysterious herb when Leafpool had just come back with Scrollflight because Leafpool was really distracted, and now he's trying to figure out what that herb is, and I just think that plotline is very entertaining. I just read Honeyfern's death. I forgot that she died in this book. I just think it's not funny, but it's ironic the way that they wrote this because Barry Nose and Honeyfern are talking, and Barry Nose is like, oh, basically in front of everyone, our kids are gonna be so great. Do you want to have kids with me? And Honeyfern's like, yeah, I would like that. So basically, he just asked her to be his mate, and then Honeyfern gets bit by a snake and dies. Which is like, I feel like they should have had that mate conversation maybe a couple chapters earlier, because then I think the emotional result of her dying would have been a little bit deeper, but because they had just had that conversation and then she died, I don't know, it just felt very abrupt in not an emotional way. I mean, it was sad that she died, but again, I just think it's crazy that they have these big giant battles and fires and all this stuff from the last few books. No one dies. Oh, we'll kill off a character just by them getting bit by a snake. And it just feels a little random when you have other opportunities to kill off characters through sickness, battle, fire, flame, flood, all that stuff that makes way more sense for cats to be dying. It just felt a little cheap, but regardless, that's where I am now, and I will be finishing this up very soon. Here's my little Sunrise update. I am almost done. I'm on page 258 out of like 320, and all that's happened since I last updated was that Jay Feather, Lionblaze, and Hollyleaf have all learned that Leafpool is their mother, which is a pretty significant revelation since that's kind of the impetus for the rest of the book. And now they just really want to learn who their real father is, and Soul is still being held captive in ThunderClan camp. But all the leaders from RiverClan, WindClan, and ShadowClan all came to talk to Soul or talk to Firestar about Soul because they're not happy that Soul is there, obviously, because he's caused a lot of chaos so far in the clans, and they want Firestar to get rid of him, but Firestar hasn't decided, and Leafpool reveals to Hollyleaf that she knows that Hollyleaf killed Ashfur, so now we also know the identity of the cat who killed Ashfur, so everything's kind of being wrapped up, and let's keep going. And just like that, I have finished Arc 3, The Power of 3. The last 60 or so pages of this book were actually really good. It was very dramatic. Hollyleaf doing exactly what she had killed Ashfur for by revealing the secret about Crowfeather and Leafpool at the gathering in front of everyone is a very nice character beat and kind of brings everything together and really displays her descent into, I don't want to say madness, but a little bit of madness, because she was so obsessed with the warrior code and she felt like her entire life had been shattered by this revelation, and it all made sense with her character, and I thought it was pretty well executed overall. I still think that this arc suffered a little bit from lack of like a cohesive plot line. I can't remember if Soul comes back ever again, but if he doesn't, I don't think the Soul thing was wrapped up very well. He was like an 80% of the way fleshed out character, but that last 20% was really needed. If he had been introduced in like the first or the second book of the arc and he was more of a force for the whole arc, and then had some sort of resolution where we learned like how he knows all these things, or just like more about his past and what his motivations are, it would have wrapped in much better with the revelations about the Three's parentage, because other than that there wasn't really anything going on with the prophecy. It was really just them trying to learn where they were from, and obviously it does carry into the next arc with Dovewing and Ivy Pool and all of that part of the prophecy as well, but this just needed a little something extra. But overall, I think it was more enjoyable than the New Prophecy arc, because I hate traveling, and the first 2 books of the New Prophecy are a little painful when you already know what happens, because it's just a lot of starvation, a lot of traveling. It gets a little old. But anyway, I have finished the 3rd video in this series. If you want to see me read the next arc, please like and subscribe this video and let me know that you actually want to see the 3rd video, because if people don't want to see it, I probably won't do it, because, you know, we all need a little bit of external motivation, so let me know. Thanks for watching yet again, and bye.